best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work there too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sackheads. Sackheads.
Radio.
Sackheads. Sackheads.
Radio.
Sack. Sack. Sack.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
Into the silo.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Freedom Fest here on the SHR Media Network.
You talking to me?
Sitting at the booth with us right now is the author of Disinherited, Jared Meyer, and a co-author, I should say, because it's obviously not just you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the book and a little bit about how you got into it, why it's important to you. There's a whole litany of things that we're going to talk about, but give us a brief insight on the book to start.
So my co-author, Diana Furchgott-Roth, and I wanted to write the book because we saw that, millennials, they're getting a raw deal. Their unemployment rate for people 20 to 24 still hovers over 10%. I mean, what recovery is going on when they've still got a 10% unemployment rate? But a lot of times what you hear for why millennials are getting a raw deal is that we need government to do more. We need them to step in. We need free college. We need guaranteed jobs. We need more health care. We need more money at primary education. Well, we wanted to provide the alternative way. We wanted to show that actually it's a government that's creating a systemic problem that favors older, established interests at the expense of young people's opportunity.
And you bring up an excellent point, particularly with what they're learning in colleges nowadays and at the high school level and so forth. That government is kind of the solution to everything. If there's a problem, go to government to fix it. Therefore, if we need college, then it's government's job to provide that means to us. What specific policies are you referring to when you talk about how government has been a problem in terms of the millennial recovery and the job rate and so forth?
Well, let's start with college that you brought up. The current system of federal student loans, it's a confusing system, but the best way to understand it is it's a blank check written to colleges. The government says, you know what, go ahead, build all the rock climbing walls, water slides, hire all the administrators you want. Don't worry, we're going to have taxpayers pick up the tab. And colleges have this incentive to just keep increasing their costs. Even the U.S. Department of Treasury found that for every dollar in increased federal student aid, scholarships fell $1. So we're shifting the burden of college from students to then taxpayers. And also the question of if college is providing a value. It's went up almost 1,200%. Costs have since the late 1970s, but foods only went up 240% over that time. I don't think college has gotten that much better when almost 40% of recent graduates, those who actually do graduate, are working in jobs that don't require a college degree at all.
And our colleges, like you indicated, they're using those funds for other things, rock climbing walls, those sorts of things. What do you think about the quality of education that we're seeing, particularly today at the college level, and preparing millennials, preparing young adults for coming out into the workforce, and not only coming out into the workforce in order to become productive members of society, obviously, and to make a life for themselves, but also to participate in our political system and making decisions and vote in ways that are going to directly impact the direction this country goes?
Yeah, well, American colleges, they're still the best universities in the world, but the problem is not everyone needs to go to a 4-year liberal arts college, yet we built public policy around this idea of everyone, no matter what, needs to go to 4-year college, when there's lots of alternative options that are much more affordable. Community college, then you can use those credits to transfer to a 4-year state school, get a degree at half the price, or you can go to technical school. We're facing what's going to be a major shortage in a lot of the technical skills, yet college guidance counselors, who are working at high schools, they practically treat that as a consolation prize if you can't get into college, when technical school's nothing to shake your head at.
Well, and exactly, what's funny is they push you into degrees like underwater basket weaving, and then people are shocked that they can't pay back their student loans. I can't find a job in underwater basket weaving. Well, yeah, it's a ridiculous job. But you look at trades, especially when you say tech schools, I always think of trades: plumbing, electrician, carpenters, contractors, jobs that pay, if you're good at it, well over median, and certainly well over minimum wage. I mean, especially now, because there are so few skilled craftsmen and tradesmen and women in the field, that they're in ridiculously high demand. You see that, Mike Rowe, the guy who used to
Oh, yeah, the Dirty Jobs.
Dirty Jobs
Yeah,
guy,
yeah.
he pushes that huge. And I agree with you. I actually went to a technical high school, and I was horrible at carpentry, but it gave me a better understanding of it. But more importantly, there are some kids that came out of it that are ridiculously successful, where college, and they'll tell you to this day, college never would have been the right place for them. They never would have succeeded. But they went with something, A, that was a passion, and B, was actually lucrative and was amazingly beneficial to their future and the future of everybody else. Because if we don't have plumbers, we're going to be in trouble at some point. And through attrition, we're actually losing tradesmen and craftsmen at an incredible rate, and they're not being backfilled.
Yeah, but right now when we're pushing kids into college, it's amazing. Only 40% of freshmen are going to graduate within 4 years of college freshmen. And within 6 years, it's still only 60%. So graduating with student loan debt, which about 70% of graduates do at an average of $27,000, that's bad enough. Imagine going to college and not graduating and having this debt when there are the other attractive options you talked about that are on the table to be picked up.
Absolutely. And now, are there financial policies that the government has put into place that are also helping to contribute to this disenfranchisement, if you will, of millennials?
Yeah, definitely. If we look at everything from monetary policy to labor policy to education to just the massive debt and unfunded liabilities in the forms of promises we've made for Social Security and Medicare, as I said, this isn't just one issue. This is a massive war against young people by Washington.
It is, and one of the I don't want to say criticisms, but one of the points of contention or discussion that I've had with millennials has been. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I'm not of the millennial generation. I'm a generation or so ahead, or before.
Two.
Stop. Two or three, right? Like I don't know what this is.
Well,
but I'm old. But the feeling I get, or the feedback I get when I have discussions with millennials, is there's not really there is a lack of understanding in terms of the founding principles of our country. There is a lack of interest in those founding principles. There is a belief of, well, government is the answer because they study Karl Marx in school instead of reading John Locke, Adam Smith, reading Wealth of Nations. They're reading these other things. They're reading a people's history of the United States as a fact-based history book, and so there's really this disenchantment with our country. We're not an exceptional country, and therefore really doesn't matter to get involved in the political system. And yeah, it is government's job, that Marxist right, to provide us with a place to live and an education and do all these things as a right. How do we fix that? I mean that is a huge deal to me, particularly as a concern of I'm looking at millennials as a voting base, right? I mean they're going to be the ones. Your generation is going to decide where this country ends up, and we're heading in a particular direction right now, which scary. It scares me, and it seems like we're having less and less voters turnout every election. So how do we re-energize, reinvigorate that millennial group, and not only through government policy, but also like as a community?
Yeah, well, millennials, when we look at it, you're right that a lot just want to ignore the political process, but unfortunately politics isn't going to ignore them, and they're going to keep placing the cost of programs on young people if they don't vote. But one of the reasons they don't vote is they feel really left behind by both parties. Millennials on a whole tend to be socially liberal and fiscally conservative, and they haven't really found a party that fits into what they're looking for yet. And they're highly individualistic, obviously. But one thing I do see that's a positive is when President Obama took office, only 40% of millennials view government as inefficient and wasteful. Well, the last 6 years have changed their mind. Now 2/3 of millennials view government as inefficient and wasteful. And
so they can learn.
Yeah, they can. They elected President Obama with the highest hopes, and he's let them down every time. As I said, what recovery? But another thing I see as really positive is the rise of the sharing economy. Because of things such as Uber and Airbnb, I call it a whole generation of Ubertarians, these people who view government regulation as nothing more than protecting special interests at the expense of the public. and only 18% of millennials think that government regulators have the public's interest in mind. So they're seeing regulations for what they are when they hit so close to home. Don't get, between me and my Uber.
Right. You could get run over getting into the car.
Yeah. But then again, I think that comes into voting, because as if they're more involved in that political process, they're able to make those changes needed for these federal agencies that are imposing these regulations and so forth. But also start electing people that aren't going to pass the buck off to their generation for paying back, and even beyond to their kids. I mean, I wouldn't want to vote for anybody that my kids are going to have to incur the debt, and really now are I think we're 17 million generations down to pay off our debt. I think that's a specific number.
I'm pretty sure we'll grow a third arm before we actually pay it off.
Before we actually pay.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it goes beyond the debt. If we look at the promises made to Social Security and Medicare versus what's going to come in, it's estimated at $200 trillion is the so-called fiscal gap. To write that, we'd either need to cut all federal spending by 57% or raise all taxes by 37%.
Let's cut 57.
Yeah,
I'm good.
I vote the first.
I have a whole list of federal agencies that could get cut right now.
But unfortunately, a lot of people aren't going to vote the 50. They're going to vote the 37.
Well, because it's the way they phrase it, right? It's more sexy to tax the rich people. Right. Oh, because they...
Right.
They,
but you're rich.
What have they done to earn it? You deserve
You're
half
rich,
their
that's
money.
the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, this network, you didn't build that.
Right.
Right, we didn't build that.
One really positive thing about millennials as well is people will constantly cite surveys saying millennials are socialist. No millennial actually thinks that the government should tell Apple how many iPhones they can make and what features should be in the iPhone 7. Socialism is just, a sexy word that they learned in school that they want to say they're socialist. Instead, millennials are really capitalist. I was walking through New York and I saw a cereal store, a store that only sells cereal and milk. This is a millennial owning this store.
That's actually a great idea.
I want to go to that store.
That is a great idea.
I mean, if you want to pay $10 for a bowl of cereal, but hey,
have you ever had Lucky Charms in Times Square? I mean, that's kind of impressive.
This was
Big
Brooklyn.
deal.
It was way more
even
hipster
better.
than
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, there was way more horn rimmed glasses going on there. So, the plan to get out and the plan to save millennials, because like you said, it's going to be their problem sooner rather than later. And I think that's part of the problem I have with a lot of millennials is some of them are getting that mentality of, we get time. Oh, we could fix this eventually. We'll get around to it. I'll eventually pay off my student loans. I'll get a job and get out of mom's basement eventually. It's kind of, you hear that a lot, and there's no incentive in a lot of reasons because of the lies that come out as to what they should be doing.
That's what I think. Do you think that they're uninvolved because of Washington kind of pushing the burden off on them and kind of pushing them to the side?
Well, partially, because they've grown up with full acceptance of the national debt. They've never known anything else except for massive deficits. And if we look at how millennials are constantly, they do have a positive outlook for the future, surprisingly, even with everything Washington's thrown at them. But that does create the problem of maybe they're almost complacent with it. One millennial I spoke to in writing the book, we talked to a lot of millennials. We've got their stories in the book. And one of them told me, I just view the Social Security thing that's coming out of my paycheck as just another tax. I don't think I'm ever going to get a cent back, yet they're still fine paying this.
Yes.
That's crazy.
I agree with you. And Social Security is something, whether you agree or disagree with Social Security, the people that have paid into it deserve what they were required to by law to get at some point. We can argue as to whether or not it ever should have went on the books. That's an argument for a different day. But reality is looking more and more like Social Security may not be there. And I think our generation, the one maybe ahead of you, maybe 5 ahead of you, whatever, we're going to be hit the hardest because we've paid into it through the majority of our working career. And just if you look at some of the numbers and some of the things people are predicting, just as we're about to hit retirement, it may not be there. Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll be 25 or 26 years old then. And wait, we're going backwards or forwards?
No, you're going forwards.
I'm going forwards.
I'm going backwards.
It absolutely figures. So what's your final message to millennials, and what do you want people to take away from the book and take away for the future?
Well, what I want people to take away when reading the book, this isn't generational warfare. This isn't the AARP sitting in a smoke-filled room thinking, how can we screw over millennials? You know, our grandkids.
How do you know? It might be that.
Yeah, exactly.
I just know because going down to Florida, you can't get grandparents to shut up about their grandkids. So I assume they care about their opportunities as much as young people care about it.
They're carrying assault walkers.
But I just want people to realize that this is what happens when we give government too much power. It always is going to favor the politically powerful, those with wealth, those who are invested in the voting process, and they're going to pass off the cost to the politically weak, which happen to be the young. And I want them to also see that even, this isn't a partisan issue. Both parties have been guilty of doing the
absolutely.
evil
I'll agree
genius
with
game
that.
of promising benefits now and kicking off costs to the future. But there is one way out of this, and because our debt is so bad, we have to grow ourselves out of this problem. 2% growth is never going to fix it. But right now, we have over 1 million commandments from Washington in the Code of Federal Regulations. Words such as must, cannot, or shall. These are Washington bureaucrats saying you have to do something. How can we ever expect an entrepreneur to build a business or grow their business when they have to figure out which of these million commandments apply to them? So if we could get our regulatory state under control and pare it back and stop the never-ending growth in regulations, we might just see millennials pull the economy out of the rut by just starting their own businesses and working.
And it's certainly possible, and you brought awareness to it. What do you hope millennials will actually do in order to assist with that process? Are you talking about getting them more engaged in the voting process, getting them more engaged in the political process in terms of like overseeing these agencies that are imposing these regulations? What specifically would you like to see millennials do in order to help bring this about?
Yeah, I definitely want them more engaged in the political process because, as I said, even if they ignore the political process, it's not going to ignore them. So they can say, I don't agree with any party. I'm just going to sit this out. Well, you got to make your voice heard. You got to make the parties start appealing to you. And I was testifying in front of Congress last week for the House Republican Policy Committee just on that issue. The Republicans realize they need to craft their message so that they can bring in millennials. So I was bringing in the suggestions on what you need to do, and it's up for grabs. Millennials are politically unclaimed. But whatever party can be the party of entrepreneurship and innovation, those are words that resonate with millennials. 70% want to work for themselves at some point. So whichever party can do that and free them to own their own cereal shops, to ride their Ubers, whichever party can do that, that's the one that will finally claim the millennial generation.
Well, sir, we want to thank you for your time. Jared Meyer, you want to tell them about your book, Disinherited, where they can find it?
Yeah, Disinherited, How Washington's Betraying America's Young, which I wrote with Diana Furchgott-Roth. It's on all major bookstores, Amazon, Apple Books. You can find it there. And yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
No, thanks for listening. And you have a copy here. We started it. It's a fantastic book, so check it out.
That's it. Live from the Freedom Fest floor. We'll be back at the top of the hour with the exceptional conservative Jared. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Thanks
for your time,
again.
sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was fun.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Hack you. Hack you.
Radio.
Hack you. Hack you.
Radio.
Sack. Sack.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
Into the silo.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.